make sure to follow us on Instagram at Whistlethrowers. It's a great way to interact with our show. Our DMs are always open for questions, topic discussions, and more. You will be able to find our new episodes and other announcements there. If you're Dallas, that game should scare you a little bit because that's a Mike McCarthy coached team.
All right, thanks for tuning back to the Whistlethrowers podcast. This is Jack Mubarak, joined by
Jack Sunmaker.
And we got a lot of topics to cover today. First, let's start off with the NFL. So we started Baker Mayfield last week, and we'll do it again this week. So he got the start in his first ever game with the LA Rams off of like 4 days of preparation. And to end the game, he had a 98-yard game-winning drive. And I feel like Baker can't catch a break because Dak literally did the exact same thing 4 days after. I'm not validating Dak's 98-yard game winner over Baker's by any means necessary. It was just like really ironic to see. But anyway, he played well. What does this mean for like the QB room? And
I don't know if it does much. I think that Baker is just kind of a bridge from this year into next year when Stafford hopefully will be healthy. I mean, we'll see. If Stafford has to miss part of the beginning of next season, then I think they keep Baker. Like, I think that he showed on Thursday night. Like, he made a lot of people that thought like me eat their words. Like, I thought Baker had nothing in the tank and that his career had pretty much gone with the wind when Cleveland and Carolina sort of ruined it. I felt like, because I thought that he had some talent, but we see it a lot of times in the NFL. A guy coming out of college has some talent, and then his situation sort of ruins him. But Baker proved that his confidence carries him, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if someone who needs a quarterback next offseason gives him the shot.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the Panthers basically did the same exact thing, and that went terribly. I think for Baker, he has to fit in with a system that makes him successful. He'll never be the type of quarterback that brings up a team to a top-tier level. It's more that the team will have to be already pretty much built, and then you can put him in, which there's a lot of quarterbacks that are like that. When you look at around the league, that's basically what's happened, especially when you look at Washington. Taylor Heineke is not a top-tier quarterback at all, but they had the type of system, the type of team around them to be successful. The 49ers clearly have that. So I think that for Baker, he's going to have to go to a team that, like I said, is already sort of established. I don't think that going to a really bad team is going to help anyone at all. I think that if Stafford is hurt for longer than this season and his injury, because with back injuries, like I talked about last week, we just don't know what that means for Matt Stafford's career. So you could see Baker potentially being the starter in LA, and I think that would be a great fit for him if Stafford is out for longer than just a couple weeks starting the 2023 season.
Yeah, from what I've seen on the internet and stuff, Stafford's injury is sort of like the one that Peyton Manning had in his last year with the Colts. And we sort of saw a derailment of his career. Like, obviously, he still won a Super Bowl and he threw for 50 touchdowns that year, but then it was a quick fall off after that. 2013, he threw 50 touchdowns. In 2015, it looked like he couldn't really do anything on the field anymore. And that defense really carried them to a Super Bowl. So it's sort of scary, the road that Stafford is going down right now. And it's very, very blurry right now. There's no clear path for it.
And if you also remember, there was a lot of conversations in that 2011 season that could be Manning's last year, that he wouldn't even step on the football field again.
Right.
There is, like you said, Jack, there's going to be a lot of questions about this injury, the type of injury it is. It's certainly scary. Any type of injury to the back, neck, any of that is very scary for anyone. Obviously, quarterbacks are much more protected now than they were even 10 years ago when Manning had that surgery 11 years ago. But it's still very scary for any NFL player, anyone playing contact sport to have an injury like that, because potential of hurting it again and making it worse is very, very high. I think that Matthew Stafford's definitely going to look at where his career's at. And I mean, when you look at Stafford's career, and again, I hope that he's healthy enough to play again, but he's won a Super Bowl. He's been one of the best quarterbacks for one of the worst teams over the 2010s decade in the Lions, and still consistently put up great stats. And that win that Super Bowl, I feel like that would be a great ending to his career if he decides it's over. I think if he hadn't won that Super Bowl, there'd be a lot more motivation to go back out there and get it done. but I think that this could be sort of the crescendo to his career, and it would be a great one. It could be a possible Hall of Fame situation with the stats that he's put up. Obviously, his stats are a little bit – his winning stats are sort of demoted by the fact that he played for the Lions, but his career stats are still amazing, even if it hasn't been a long career as Brady, Breeze, Manning, Rodgers, but it's still up there when you look at his stats.
Yeah.
We'll definitely want to see how that plays out, but I want to go to the Dolphins and Chargers game next. So this was a highly touted matchup, and Tua didn't play to his full potential this game. He had 145 pass yards and 1 touchdown, and Tyreek Hill accounted for the only touchdown and over half of those yards. So are you starting to have concerns about Tua?
Tua is a very polarizing player. You know, especially nationally, it feels like people are on either side of the coin, and the people that like him, his fan base, is very vocal. You know, one of the players that Tua has been compared to is Herbert, obviously, because they were drafted right after each other. I feel like people have been trying to push a narrative on Herbert that Herbert isn't a winner and that Tua is better than Herbert because Tua is going to make the playoffs, obviously, and Herbert has yet to do that. Herbert showed that he can be a leader and he can be a winner. I mean, obviously, it's just one game and we need to see more out of it, but there's no questions about Herbert that I feel like people were trying to raise, and I think that it was very wrong of them to do that. Like, Herbert, I feel like, is a solidified franchise QB in this league. And as for Tua, I feel like he can be. I think that he has that potential, but Tua has a lot of things that he needs to work on and tweak in his mechanics and things. Obviously, people go after his noodle arm, but the thing is, I don't think he necessarily has a weak arm. Like, I think that right now it's timing, because I think back to a third down in the game against the Chicago Bears. Tua underthrew Waddle on like a wide open 3rd and 10, and it was late in the 4th, and people have been pointing that, and like, yeah, it was a bad throw, but I think it was a timing issue. Like, I think if he decided to throw it just like literally half a second sooner, it would have been in the spot where Waddle was running under it. He was throwing the ball and taking a hit, but if he decided quicker, it would have been throwing the ball and then take the hit instead of simultaneous, which made him underthrow it too. So I think that he has the potential, but maybe this is a good year for him to sort of get a lot of film on himself, and then next year attack the offseason, you know, that way. Because I think at this point, it's just a film thing for Tua. I think that he can fix it, though.
Yeah, and I want to, I'm not attacking your point. You brought up a great point where people say that Justin Herbert isn't a winner, but they forget he's in a division with Patrick Mahomes. So
yeah,
you're not going to win that division, and if you do, it's going to be one in few years, and you just got to battle it out for a wild card spot, and you're in the tougher conference. So it's not on him. It's just his environment.
Yeah.
And if he was in the NFC, he would probably be in a division spot and definitely in a wild card spot. So it's all not on his character and him not being a winner or anything.
Agreed. And his coach is very questionable. And you look at this year, I love the saying that winning isn't a QB stat, because I completely agree with that, because winning a football game takes 33 people. To pin it on one person is just ridiculous. Look at the Chargers this year. They've dealt with a ton of injuries on the defensive side. They lost their best player. Herbert's a great player, but the most impactful player on their roster probably was Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa has missed a bunch of time this season with, I believe it was either a wrist or an ankle, I forget. But he's missed a bunch of time, and it's hard to build any sustainability in winning football when you're missing a guy like that. And to pin the Chargers losing this season on Justin Herbert is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers as well have had a ton of injury issues, defensively and offensively. The fact that Mike Williams and Keenan Allen have both missed multiple weeks Keenan Allen, there was a good stretch where he played like the first quarter of the first game, a little bit of another game, but he basically missed about 9 weeks of the season. So you're now seeing getting these weapons back is making the Chargers much more scary offensively. The defense is getting some more guys back as well. Obviously, they're still missing some very, very high caliber players, but even just getting some guys back now, it's making them look more like the team that everyone thought they were going to be at the beginning of this year.
Right, I agree with that.
And I also want to credit the Chargers defense for the game that they played on Sunday night. Because Tua struggled a lot, and Jack, I totally agree that there was definitely a timing issue, but there was also just the fact that their defense wasn't letting anyone open. Mm-hmm. They were constantly double-teaming Tyree. They were bringing in some zones, blitzes, and then bringing the guys that were blitzing out. So it just was totally throwing off the rhythm that Tua had with anyone just because the Chargers were able to change up their defense a lot, which if the Chargers can keep doing that, that's going to be very scary for other teams to face. If you don't know the defense that you're going to be reading, if they keep changing it every week, that means that the guys like Mahomes and Burrow, they're going to have to be the ones to beat you to be able to read those defenses because it's not an easy defense to read.
Yeah, and I agree with that, like crediting the Chargers defense. Like in that game, we've seen all year how hard it is to stay on top of Tyreek Hill. And it felt like the Chargers really did that. Like they put the lid on top of the Dolphins offense, which a lot of teams have struggled with this year. And that was incredibly impressive. I agree with you.
Yeah. In the second half, Tyreek got a little bit away from them. And that one fumble that he returned is one of the most ridiculous plays I've ever seen in an NFL game before.
Right.
I mean, just his awareness of space and where the ball is at all times is amazing. And it's something that you saw when he was with Kansas City and the routes that he ran. And he sort of did the similar thing where his attention is always on the ball. Where am I supposed to be and where the ball is? And that's why he's able to make a play like that. And that's why most other people wouldn't even be able to have the awareness to make the ball. And with his speed, he was absolutely going to score a touchdown on that play.
Yeah, he's a heat-seeking missile in the open field. And I mean, once he gets a step on you, it's over. There's no chance of you catching.
And I want to move into the Buccaneers-49ers game. Mm-hmm. So Brock Purdy, this was his first NFL start, and he had 3 touchdowns, and he led the team to a 35-7 win over Tom Brady. Tom Brady couldn't seem to find anything to work offensively.
Yeah.
And Brock Purdy had a great game. I'm starting to think, I've been defending Jimmy in the past. Like, I think he's a very capable quarterback, but I think seeing Brock Purdy come in and do what he does is more of a testament to the rest of the team around him instead of, like, who's taking snaps under center. I kind of think that team is just, like, a perfect system where they can make anyone look good and anyone can thrive throwing to those options. So, do you think Brock Purdy has any potential to, like, keep playing this way, or do you think it's just situational with this team?
I think it's a little bit situational. Like, I agree with you. You know, it's obvious now that Jimmy G is a very, very, very glaringly system QB, you know, because Brock Purdy came in and against a pretty good Buccaneers defense, he played really well. It was impressive how well he played, but at the same time, you sort of expect it in the playoffs. You expect what Jimmy G puts up in the playoffs from Brock Purdy, and like that's kind of where I'm thinking the road is going for them.
But to test that point, like Trey Lance hasn't had a start the way Brock Purdy has this season.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is a balance, but I do see the argument on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up Purdy's college stats. I know he went to Iowa State. I know everyone knows he was Mr. Relevant. But the difference between Lance and Purdy is the fact that Lance played for North Dakota State, which is great as a program that is. It's still an FCS school, which there's a lot of questions about the talent at the FCS level, especially when you play for a team like North Dakota State that always is going to have the best players at that level. Where Purdy had to play a lot of very, very other talented teams in the Big 12. I remember Iowa State during his time always being a very good team. Mm-hmm. So I think that he already had the skill level going to the NFL. And I know that I said that Garoppolo, in my opinion, was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. And he's obviously played better up until his injury, but Purdy showed me similar to what you guys both said, that anyone could be quarterback for them. And I honestly like Purdy more than Garoppolo because of the running factor. Garoppolo is not really a mobile quarterback at all. He can escape the pocket a little bit when he absolutely has to, but Purdy's running ability adds another level to the quarterback position that the 49ers are really hoping they would have in Trey Lance. But he's a better passer than Lance is, which makes it a very scary option for the 49ers. And I was trying to remind people that back in 2012, the 49ers were in a very similar situation where they had a very established quarterback who had won a lot of games for them, and Alex Smith. He gets hurt, and then basically nobody named Colin Kaepernick comes in, who's a very athletic quarterback, much more than Alex Smith was, and carried the 49ers to the Super Bowl, which they lost by 3 points. Nobody would have thought that when Alex Smith got hurt, that's what would have happened. And I feel like this is a very similar situation, and I can see this going very, very well for the 49ers.
So you expect a QE battle between Purdy and Lance next season?
I expect it between all three. I think the 49ers have one of the best situations possible at the quarterback position. Because you can either now say to Garoppolo, hey, we were wrong. You played much better than we thought that you were going to, and we want you back. And also with Lance's injury, we don't know if he's going to be the same player. You can say to Trey Lance, hey, we're going to keep you around now that you're healthy and get rid of Garoppolo. But you could also then have the battle between either Garoppolo and Birdie or Lance and Birdie, or a battle between all three. And I don't really think you could go wrong with any of them at this point. Obviously, Purdy's only played one full game, so it's a very, very small sample size, and he could look so much worse. Especially once the playoffs come around, we'll see how good he actually is against much higher level teams than the Buccaneers, who are not a good team at all. The only reason that they're within sniffing the playoffs is because they play in the NFC South, which has a bunch of terrible teams. So they're just a little bit better than all the other terrible teams in their division. But like I said, I do think that the 49ers are in a great position at the quarterback level.
And you touched on the NFC South. I want to touch on Tom Brady and his situation, like, moving forward. Do you see him returning for another season if they lose the playoffs, or if they don't get in the playoffs? My bad.
I see him coming back to play in the NFL. I don't know if it's going to be with the Buccaneers. There's been a lot of rumors swirling around that he could go back to New England. I don't know if that would necessarily happen. I think that would be very detrimental to Mac Jones's career if Brady does that, because it sort of shows that the Patriots are much more interested in just bringing this guy back than actually developing your quarterback, who's played a little bit better this year, but looked pretty solid last year. And even though he's had a bit of a sophomore slump, the Patriots are still well within reaching the playoffs at this point. So I don't know if they would do that. I don't know if Brady would want to go anywhere else. Maybe he throws his hat in the ring for San Francisco because that was his hometown team. I don't know what his mind's at, and I think he kind of likes it that way, honestly. I think he likes to keep people guessing. One, because it keeps his name in the media attention in the national media circle, which any publicity is good publicity, especially for a guy like Tom Brady. And two, it also means that at this point he could go to a situation that is going to be much more successful for his career than Tampa Bay is right now. I do think he comes back, especially if the Buccaneers miss the playoffs this year. Like I said, I think it's going to be with a different team.
Yeah, I sort of agree with that. I think the ship has sailed for him in Tampa Bay as well. I think that the mirage has sort of worn off and Brady doesn't really like it there anymore, especially now that it's kind of taken a turn for the worse. They've had a bunch of injuries this year. Their coaching staff looks depleted right now. It looks like they made a terrible decision getting rid of Arians for Todd Bowles. So I don't know if Brady wants to be in Tampa Bay at all. You know, where there's smoke, there's fire, they say. And this New England situation is heating up. I sort of see it heading in that direction because if you remember in 2019, after the Patriots lost to the Titans, those were the rumors, was that Brady was going to go to down south to play in either Miami or Tampa. He wanted to move down there, and he did. So I don't think it's a coincidence that we're hearing rumors about him and potentially New England even wanting a return. You know, I don't think that that's a coincidence at all.
Yeah, it doesn't really. What were you going to say?
No, I just don't. From his his perspective at this point, I understand wanting to go back and finish your career at New England, but in my opinion, they're not set up to win at this point. When you look at their weapons are worse than what Brady had playing his entire career in New England.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Aguilar goes back to what he was in 2017, but I just don't see it. Nelson Aguilar is a bit above average, and that's all you're going to get from him. You've got a couple other tight ends that you brought in trades that haven't panned out at all. Their running backs, they have basically 3 running backs that they've used in the past, 4 weeks. Some of them have looked pretty solid, but they're still too young to know if they're actually going to be any good. The only thing that's keeping them alive is the defense, and that's mostly because Belichick is a complete defensive mastermind that any team would kill to have someone like that at their coaching level, a head coach or defensive coordinator. Patriots are just lucky to have him as both. So I don't know if Brady could win. And the other part of this as well is the fact that Brady and Belichick were rumored to have a bit of a falling out when Brady left. So I don't know if they can reconcile that either for Brady to come back for just 1 year. And there's also the Mac Jones aspect. So I just feel like that there's so much drama this would cause, but I could also see it happening, which would make New England, again, a national headline, just not for winning as they were for 2 decades.
Yeah, I was thinking this over, like you mentioned it not being a good idea going back to the Patriots with Mac Jones there. I don't really think many teams can make the argument for it making sense for them going after Tom Brady just at this point in his career. And personally, I don't want to see him go back to New England. I just think it would be corny. I don't know. I think he has to stay there if anything, because I think it's going to be like an Aaron Rodgers thing. The grass isn't going to be any greener than it is, and the grass isn't really green on his own side, so he's got to either play through it or just hang up the cleats.
Could you imagine, and you just mentioned Aaron Rodgers, this made me think because of another team that's really struggling. Could you imagine if Aaron Rodgers had gone to Denver, as so many people were saying?
Yeah.
I'm so happy he didn't.
That would have been so much worse. I mean, again, not that the Packers are playing great this season, but it would have been so much worse for his career to go to Denver and have everyone blasting you for leaving your team to play like that. Yeah. And I feel like that Brady's sort of setting him up for the same situation if he decides to leave Tampa Bay.
Yeah. And quickly, I want to tap into 2 games. So this was the Chiefs and Broncos game, and the Chiefs really kept it way too close with the Broncos, who have been surprisingly one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. The Dallas Cowboys really struggled up against the worst team in the NFL in the Texans, and it took a 98-yard game-winning drive to beat them by 4 points. Mm-hmm. So what struggle by a contender was more embarrassing?
Oh, you have to look at the Dallas struggle, because so many times in that game they had situations to pull ahead or, take control of that game, and they were just letting it slip through their fingers. The defense that had been so stout and so star-studded this entire season got pretty much torched by Davis Mills and the 1-11 Texans. It's definitely Dallas for me. Dak throws an interception he's behind, driving, trying to take the lead, and he throws an interception deep in his own territory with about 5 minutes in the fourth quarter. To any competent NFL team, that game is over. Dallas gets the stop because the Texans didn't go for the field goal there, which was the right move. Like you said, 98-yard drive. I thought that was the only bright spot of that game for Dallas, was those 2 minutes where Dak drove them 98 yards. And if you're Dallas, that game should scare you a little bit, because that's a Mike McCarthy coached team.
I agree, it's the Cowboys. I am not as concerned as you are, just because the Texans have done that this year against really good teams, is play with a let's go out there and show them what we got attitude, because they know that they're so bad that the only chance they have is to go 100%. And I feel like a lot of teams weren't expecting that. I feel like the Eagles weren't expecting that when they played them on that Thursday night game, when they won by 12, but they definitely should have won by less, if they should have won that game at all if they were playing a competent team. And Dallas did not look prepared at all this week. So I think that there's just sort of this team, it's hard to get psyched up to play against a really bad team. I know that every coach and every player says that every game matters, and any team can win on any given Sunday. But in reality, you can't mentally psych yourself up to play a team this badly. As long as you're able to pull it out, that tells me that you have the capability to win these type of games, and that is what makes and breaks good football teams. If Dallas doesn't have that game-winning drive, I'm very worried about them. But the fact they did tells me, hey, when the going gets tough, and we haven't really been in this game at all for a good 58 minutes, in these last two, let's play our hearts out. And that's something that not a lot of teams can do in that situation. So that makes me feel very good about where the Cowboys are going for a late game in this season against a team that they should have beat by a lot more.
And quickly, I want to just go over two upset games. So first we had Jacksonville Jaguars beating the Tennessee Titans. And we had the Minnesota Vikings coming short to the Detroit Lions. Which game do you think was the bigger upset this week?
So I'm going to go with the Jaguars one for a couple reasons. One, I found that the Lions were favored in this game betting-wise, which surprised me a lot. But the Lions proved why that was. And also the fact the Lions have been playing very, very good football as of recently. This is something I talked about a couple weeks ago before the Buffalo game on Thanksgiving, which the Lions only lost by a field goal. And that's been their only loss in their 5 or 6 games. And the fact it was a close 3-point loss to Buffalo shows where the Lions have gotten from the beginning of the season to now. And I think they have a very good shot at making the playoffs as long as they keep playing the way they are. For Jacksonville, I really thought the Titans are going to fire up after that Eagles game, say, guess what, we got our butts kicked, but now we're playing a division rival. We have a chance to win the division if we win this game, a much better chance than we do if we lose. So let's fire up, let's get ready to play, and let's beat these guys. And they did not do that at all. So I think the Titans now are sort of at this position where it's like, okay, it's sort of a lot like the NFC South, where the Titans are just like, all right, we're in first because everyone else sucks. It feels as though Jacksonville, they have a tough schedule coming up for sure, but it feels like if Jacksonville can finish out this season, win 4 more games, finish 9-8, I think they can win the division with the way the Titans are playing right now. So this could be a huge turning point as long as the Jaguars keep it up. But I would say that was the most surprising game.
Yeah, it's really possible for them to pull out with a division at this point. I mean, I said it last week. I think that the Titans are overrated, and I got some pushback, and now this week, I think I'm starting to look a little more good on that point. I am mad. I sat Trevor Lawrence this week, and he had like 37 points. I still won anyway, but it's just something you kick yourself for. But I was wondering why the Lions were favored against the Vikings in this game. I did see that too. I thought like Kirk Cousins was out or something, but that wasn't the case. That's definitely head scratching, but the bettors got it right. They pulled through. I'm really not that hot on the Vikings still. I know Aiden thinks I'm crazy.
I saw this stat, and I didn't know this. This was I don't know if this was Kurt or is it last week, but I think it's this week. There is, I want to say 5 teams that have 10 wins. The Vikings are the only team out of those 5 to have a negative point differential. They have a negative 1 point differential having 10 wins.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Shocking. But it also shows, and this is the way the Vikings have played all year, is they won very close, contested games, and the games they lose get absolutely blown out. The Lions one was somewhat close, but the Dallas game was a minus 37 point differential. They lost 40-3, I believe. And then the Eagles game was 24-7, so they got basically blown out in that game too. So their 3 losses have not been great, but I'm just not sure how to feel about them because they still have 10 wins. They've still beaten some pretty good teams. And I never said they were going to go on a Super Bowl run. I definitely don't think that now, considering that their 2 losses have been to 2 teams that are potential Super Bowl favorites in the Eagles and Cowboys. And the other loss was to a division rival that's playing very good football. So they just haven't played well against the teams they need to beat in the NFC. In the AFC, they've done exactly what they've had to do, but that doesn't necessarily translate to the playoffs. So I am worried about where they're going. I still think they're a very good team. I still think that people doubt them going into the season. But as for a playoff run, I just don't see that as of right now.
Yeah, and I do want to touch really quickly. Evan Engram had an incredible game. Yeah. He had 11 receptions for 162 yards and 2 touchdowns. And in fantasy
he was on?
What?
Do you know whose fantasy team he was on?
Did you start him?
I did start him.
Wow, okay. All right. Okay, I wasn't expecting that, but yeah, what do you have, like 39.2 points?
Something like that. Yeah, I started him because I had Goddard, who is out with an injury, and then I'm forgetting who my other tight end was, but he had a bye this week. So I had to start Ingram, which I didn't want to do because I have two other Jaguars on my teams in Kurt and ETN, but it worked out pretty well. So
how much did you win by?
I want to say it was like close to 30.
Okay.
I mean, that had I started Justin Fields last week, I would have made the playoffs.
Really?
And I started Lamar Jackson, said he got 1 point. And I ended up losing Jack by 20. If I'd started Fields, I would have gotten 25 from him and would have won. So, disappointing, but a much better season than I had at the beginning of the year, so I'll take it.
Yeah, I'm going to win the consolation bracket, though. I still need to get my ring.
I mean, do we even need to talk about my team? I mean, come on. Give me my roses, man. What an incredible season, bro. 7 points off of 2,000 total points this year.
Jesus.
Ooh.
That's crazy.
And Cooper, and my best player was out for a majority of it. Cup missed like so much time.
No, Hurts is your best player on that.
Yeah, you're right. No, that's it.
Yeah. Now, what round did you draft him in?
Hurts? I'm going to look right now. I drafted him 50th overall.
So
that's
like 4th
crazy.
or 5th?
Yeah, 4th or 5th round.
And the most likely MVP of the NFL going 5th in our fantasy draft.
Yeah.
Wild.
So do you guys want to move into MLB Free Agency?
Yeah, we can.
All right, so let's get the big ones out of the way. Aaron Judge is staying with the Yankees for a 9-year, $360 million deal. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the biggest of all time, like year-wise?
Yeah, I believe AAV.
Okay.
Number-wise, it is the
How many
largest.
is it? Sorry.
9,360.
That would be 40 per.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess for a guy this late in his career, yeah, that would be the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's 30, so they're going to be paying him $40 million into 39. I feel like that's just how baseball is nowadays. Like when you're spending money, you're going to be spending a lot, and it's going to be for a long time as well. Same thing with the Phillies. Trey Turner's 29. They gave him 11 years, and yeah, $300 million. So we can knock those two right off the bat. I think both of them were the right move. Although the numbers are high and the age is sort of questionable, I do agree with this. I think the Phillies set it up pretty nice. So the Phillies set it up so that they're going to be paying Turner, I think,
It's 27.
27 and a
Yeah,
half.
because Harper's getting 25.
Yeah. So I believe in, let's see, it'll be 2031, 2030. Those years, I believe 27 million per year might be a smaller number than what it is today. I think the Phillies set themselves up nicely in that department. Same with the Yankees. And I think that for guys of Turner and Judge's caliber, you're going to be getting the most production out of them in the first half of this contract, and they're going to give you all they're worth, I feel like.
Yeah, I didn't really see Judge going anywhere else, to be
neither
honest.
did I. And even when Heyman put out the Arson Judge to the Giants tweet, which was hilarious. That was one of the funniest moments of the MLB offseason. Even when he put that out, I was shocked, frankly. And then when it was fake, once he said that he jumped the gun and obviously it was fake, that's when I kind of knew he was going to the Yankees. At that time, I was like, yeah, he's going to go.
Yeah, I also just kind of came up with a quick conspiracy theory about that. So John Heyman writes for the New York Post. He's a Yankees fan. Do you think there's a chance he put that out to put pressure on the Yankees to sign Judge?
It's possible.
It's possible. I wouldn't be surprised. It's sort of like where, like I said earlier, where there's smoke, there's fire. And if that came out, I would not be surprised about that. I feel like it might be a long shot at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I have no proof that should actually happen. I just thought of it on the spot now.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting because Heyman has defended the Yankees a lot. He's been a big East Coast baseball fan his entire life. So it wouldn't, like Jackie said, it wouldn't shock me if that came out. I don't think it ever will. Just something interesting to think about. Speaking of the Giants, because they were mentioned about Judge all from the offseason till now, and they didn't get him. They still spent money this offseason. They signed Mitch Haniger from Seattle to a 3-year, $43 million contract, which I love. I love Haniger as a player. I think he's super underrated just because he played for a small market in Seattle, but I think this could pay off well. They re-signed Jack Peterson to a 1-year, $19 million deal. And they also signed Sean Manaea from San Diego for 2 years, $25 million, and Ross Stripling from Toronto for 2 years, $25 million. So they did a lot this offseason to build up that team, and they already have some pretty good pieces as well. So I think that they are trying to get back in the conversation of making a playoff spot this year.
Yeah, and like after a down year last year, like I don't think that they're necessarily out of the woods yet. And baseball's one of those sports where things can go awry year to year. So I think that they could definitely get back into the mix in the National League this year.
Yeah, and you mentioned also, Jack, that these signings have happened and this is the way baseball is. This is how baseball is now. If you remember the past 5 years before the lockout, teams were not spending this early in free agency.
Yep.
I don't remember the last time that teams spent this much more money within the first month and a half of the offseason. I really don't. So it shows that the lockout has changed the economics of baseball to now teams are going to spend big money right away, that the players are going to get the money that they thought they deserved early on when they weren't getting the contracts. Because there have been a lot of guys that sat out in free agency hoping to get deals because they thought that would be the best thing for the careers, and it just wasn't happening for the past 5 to 10 years. So now it is, which has totally changed how teams are going to play. I mean, even teams like the Guardians spent money already, a team that had the lowest salary out of any team. So the fact that even these small market teams have gone out and made deals, obviously not like huge profile ones, but the fact they're spending any money at all just shows where baseball is going.
Yeah, I agree. And like that's a good signing to get into is Josh Bell. I loved that move for Cleveland because their pitching was really good this year. Like they had an emergence with the young guy. What's his name? Help me on this one. Tristan McKenzie. They had an emergence with him this year. I think he was at like a 2.7 or 2.6 ERA over like 300 innings. So he pitched really well. Or maybe I might be wrong on that. It might be a 3. But regardless, their pitching was really good, and they needed a big bat in that lineup next to Jose Ramirez to really get things going. And Josh Bell could be that. He's a loud bat, and he's an energy guy and a clubhouse guy. Like I could tell when after he got traded to the Padres from Washington, like the clubhouse in San Diego really liked him, and that showed in the playoffs too. Like they got hyped for everything he did, and he was one of those guys that played all 9 innings no matter what. And I mean, that's a really good signing for Cleveland. I think they have a chance to sort of get in the mix in the American League because they got into the playoffs sort of because of a weak division, but I think that they could take the next step, because I don't think that the tier under the Astros, I don't think that's unachievable for Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, if it hadn't been for the Yankees series, and they played the Yankees much tougher than anyone thought they were going to in the ALDS. So I think that I agree. They have a really good shot at it. The other team that spent really big money that I want to touch on is the Mets. They've signed a lot of players.
Mm-hmm.
Some high-profile ones. Others are just sort of bullpen / just fillers. But the re-signing of Brandon Nimmo is huge for them. The re-signing of Edwin Diaz is huge. Bringing Verlander, Quintana to your rotation helps because you lost DeGrom. And obviously, Verlander pitched really well this year. I don't know if he'll still be able to keep it up in his age, 40, 41 years, but we'll see. Quintana's just a solid back rotation guy, and getting Dave Robinson as well. It's the Mets said that they were going to spend big money. They've spent big money, and they are going to be very, very tough to play against. I think that they were very disappointed in the fact that they lost in the wild card very easily to the Padres. They want to win the division. They're going to outspend everyone in the NL East to win that division. Or at least they're going to try to. The Phillies are also spending a lot of money as well. So it seems like it's going to be a competition between those two for spending money and the Braves, just because the Braves are very good at getting these very young players on lower contracts for long term, which sets them up great for the next 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, the Braves are just good at getting good players. That's an easy way to put it, For the Mets, they've spent a lot, and I'd be questioning how they built it this year, honestly, because the strength of your rotation is Scherzer and Verlander. Scherzer struggled to stay on the mound last year. He's dealt with injuries recently, and somewhat same for Verlander. Obviously, he was coming off Tommy John and had a really good year. But that's sort of shaky up there, and I don't know if they necessarily built the back of it that well. Losing Taijuan Walker, I think for them was a plus because, that's not a knock on Taijuan Walker. I think he's a good pitcher, but I don't know if it was a great fit anymore. And, the second half of seasons, he was really, really going down a cliff. So I think it's better for both to part ways. I'm not sure that they can handle Scherzer and Verlander getting hurt for extended period of time.
Definitely not. And you saw what happened when DeGrom and Scherzer were both hurt, and how quickly they fell apart.
Yeah, right. And, that's a big reason why Walker fell apart in second halves is because he sort of had to take on a bigger role. I'm not sure if Jose Quintana's the answer. He's a good pitcher. We saw against the Phillies this year in Game 1 of the wild card. He pitched really well. He didn't allow a run over 5 2/3, I think. But
he's had a resurgence since everything that happened with the White Sox and the Cubs.
Yeah, so I do think that was a good move, but at the same time, it's only a good move if Scherzer and Verlander are out there. If Quintana has to be your number one, that's not the road you want to go down.
Yeah, definitely not. And I believe that Chris Bassett's also a free agent right now.
He signed with Toronto.
He did sign with Toronto. Yeah. So they just lost another pitcher there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he was pretty good. Obviously, again, another guy who second half was a little shaky, and then he pitched the final wild card game, right? Or that was Scherzer. Bassett threw number 2, I guess.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, and I want to note that the Padres signed Xander Bogaerts to a massive deal, 11 years, $280 million. And the Padres keep on collecting stars to their team, and they're poised to make a run now, especially with a bunch of guys from the Dodgers parting ways with the team.
I loved that move for them, and this is a good team to get into now. Obviously, we talked about them losing Bell and Sean Manaea, but I loved them bringing back Robert Suarez, who ironically is the guy who gave up the home run to Harper, but he's still a really, really good pitcher. He had an amazing season last year. 31. They signed him to 5 years. I think it's a good deal. I think just getting him back was a good idea. But they still have a lot of room to add. They spent, obviously, big bank with Xander Bogaerts, but they have some holes to fill here. I mean, losing Bell, Sean Manaea, and Clevenger is pretty big for them. I think that those are positions of upgrade still, but they're going to have to go out and spend the money. They obviously were in the mix for Judge and Trey Turner and got not necessarily outbid, just outchosen.
This move is also interesting because there's the whole fact that Tatis is going to have to move most likely from the infield to the outfield. They could potentially keep Tatis at shortstop, and then I guess they could move Bogaerts to second if they wanted, but Hassan Kim played great defensively at second base. He batted 259 home runs, 40-some RBIs, which isn't great, but you also don't need your interior position player to have a bunch of power at the plate, as long as he plays great defense, which Kim did, and Tatis is very well known for not having great defense. So it's going to be interesting to see Tatis move to the outfield. I believe it's a position that he is familiar with if they move into left field, but he's never really played it as an everyday position in the MLB. If he comes back the same player he was before the injury and the suspension, because the suspension is still going to go into next season as well, I believe, that's going to bring up a whole bunch of questions for the Padres as well. And you also have to worry about the fact that having a guy like Tatis, who clearly has put himself first before the team in multiple situations, how he's going to respond to being moved from shortstop to the outfield.
I agree with you on that Tatis point, how is he going to react to that? Because I feel like he's sort of a typical diva athlete. Again, I don't necessarily want to believe that, but that's kind of what I'm believing right now. It'll be interesting to see, because if he can swiftly make the move to the outfield, that will be huge for them. It'll be a scary lineup. But yeah, I mean, if there's any turmoil there, it's going to be tough for them to deal with. A lineup with Soto and Bogarts in it, regardless, is going to be good in this league. So
yeah, and Machado.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I didn't even mention Machado.
Machado carried them.
Yeah.
As great as his player Soto is, he did not play that well with the Padres. Mm-hmm. The biggest reason why the Padres made it as far as they did is because of Machado.
Yeah, 100%. I think Soto hit like sub 250 in San Diego. So yeah, you're right.
Something like that. And I mean, yeah, when you go through this lineup, it is just a scary lineup all the way through. You've got Trent Grisham in center field, who didn't play that well, but he's just a great bat to have. Jake Cronenworth batted pretty well last year.
Solid glove.
So they've just got a very, very deep team.
Yeah.
All around.
Yeah.
So they should be pretty good. Obviously, you still have to compete with the Dodgers. Even though the Dodgers have lost a few pieces, they were a 100-win team last year. They're probably going to be around the 100 wins this year as well, barring serious injuries to a lot of star players. So that division is definitely them and the NL East are definitely the two toughest divisions in baseball by far.
Yeah, right. 100%.
And I want to move into the NBA. So the hottest story in the NBA right now is the New Orleans Pelicans. Do you guys buy their resurgence this season? Like, do you think it'll carry over into the postseason? It'll be like a legit threat going into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think they'll be a threat. I'm not sure if they'll come out of the West, because that's pretty much an experience thing for me. I think that experience bodes really well in basketball. So I'm not sure if they have the experience to necessarily compete with the best of the best. When you're thinking Nuggets, Suns, and Warriors, who are probably going to be up there. I mean, the Warriors have had a really, really sluggish start to the season, but I think the Warriors will be up there come playoff time. And then another team in the West that is back on the rise, after having probably 2 years where you were really questioning what was going to happen there. Portland has had a pretty good start to the season, and it looks like they're going to be in the mix. It'll be interesting to see if New Orleans can compete with them, because I think you could argue New Orleans is a better team than probably 2 or 3 of those 4 that I mentioned. Do they have enough come May and June? Because that is a big question, in the NBA playoffs. I think that they do. They're going to put up a fight, that's for sure. Like, they're not going to go down easy.
Yeah, obviously they're top of the West right now. I don't think that's sustainable.
Yeah, no. I don't think 1 seed is sustainable. No.
Yeah, because the Warriors are at 9 right now, and that's not going to be the same for much longer. I think the Clippers are going to climb up slowly. I don't really know what the Kawhi Leonard situation is looking like for them, but I hope it just works out in the sense that he's going to be able to be ready for them come playoff time.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because I think he's still coming off the bench and playing like sub 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. I don't really know why you'd want to do that, because you got to ramp him up to like playoffs, because he's going to be playing in the 42 to 48 minutes once that starts. So yeah, definitely. But Zion has been playing incredibly recently, and it should not go unnoticed. He can move anyone out of his way. He could drive and score in many ways.
Yeah.
If he develops his 3-point shot a little more than it has already, then the league's in trouble, because he's already like stepped up in his defense so much. There was a stat from, I'm blanking on the reporter's name, but I saw it on the JJ Redick podcast. He's the ESPN reporter who covers the Pelicans, and he said that for people that contest at least 10 shots, Zion's opponent field goal percentage is 37.5%, and that ranks 5th in all of the league, and he wasn't even in the top 20 last year, so his defense has made great strides for someone who wasn't that great of defense last year. I don't see them getting a top 4 seed. I see them finishing either 5 or 6 because of the 2 teams I've mentioned, and I see the Memphis Grizzlies, the Nuggets, and the Phoenix Suns kind of stagnating at the 2 to 4 positions.
Yeah.
So the West is really good again. Like there was a couple of years where it was like, oh, they're kind of mid, but now they're back to like great form. And the East is controlled by the Celtics and the Bucks, and I don't really think it matters about any of the other teams.
I think the gap is a little smaller than people think in the East, but yeah, obviously right now it is the Celtics and Bucks. I think the Celtics are a team of destiny right now. Like, they just seem perfectly built, and that's a team that's clawed at the door so many years in a row now that I think that this is the year for them.
Yeah, I mean, they played with all of the off-season drama they had with the Ime Udoka situation and the fact that they weren't really sure what was going to happen with coaching. They've looked completely fine, pretty much the same as they did last year. The Bucks are always going to be the Bucks. I'm interested in seeing Cleveland because now they've added a couple more veteran pieces to this team, and it's helped a lot when it comes to that. Karis LeVert has been unbelievable. Not to the level that he was previously, but still solid enough. And just adding that veteran experience helps a lot. They don't really have a top scorer on their team. It's more just a bunch of guys that are super solid together. And sometimes that helps more than just having a couple stars. When you look at teams like the Sixers and the Nets, when your stars are shut down, that typically means that your playoff chances don't go very far. Where when you have a team like the Cavs, anyone can step up at any given point, and that's more scary than having someone, let's say, Giannis score 30 on you every single game. Because at least then you know that you have to just focus solely on that Giannis. You don't know if Karis LeVert's going to score 20 in a game. You don't know if Jared Allen's going to score 20 in a game. And that can be really hard scheming for this team.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, like, you go down the list for their bench, too. Like, you mentioned LeVert that they bring off, but Isaac Okoro is a great name. Kevin Love is a veteran piece who's been there for a while. Cedi Osman is someone who's played with LeBron James and been a solid piece in the NBA. Like, their starting five looks good, and Mitchell's had a really, really, really good season. Probably a career year for him this year. So, I think that initially you see Cleveland at the 3 seed, and you're like, oh, I don't know if that's sustainable. But at the same time, you think about it and dig deeper into it, and it does seem more sustainable when you pretty much put all the pieces together.
Yeah, Cleveland is one of the most well-rounded teams in all of the NBA.
Yeah.
They're literally experience away from just winning.
And there's a couple other teams. The East is also, it's nice now that both conferences are equally competitive, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think the Nets and Sixers and, like, a couple of the others, like Hawks and Raptors and Heat, I think that they're going to pick up the pace now. And obviously, like, the Knicks are in the playoffs, I think, right now, and the Pacers are. And the Pacers seem pretty good, but I think that they're going to fall off a little bit. I think Chicago will get back in the mix, but especially the Knicks. The Knicks, I definitely think, are going to fall out. But the teams I said that are going to come up, I think, those are the teams that are going to come up. So I think the top three will probably stay the same, some variation of Boston, Milwaukee, Cleveland. And then to round it out, it's probably like Sixers, Hawks, Nets, Raptors, Heat. That's 8 right there. Like, the East is really good.
Yeah, and I mean, the way the NBA is set up now, if you finish still below the 8th seed, chances are you're not going to go on a deep run. Even if you finish 7th or 8th and are in the play-in, chances are you're not going to go on a deep run. Since the play-in, I don't think there's been any team that finished 7th or 8th that's won their round afterwards.
Nah.
I could be wrong about that, but I believe that there's been a team that has won the play-in and then moved on from the first round of the playoffs.
No, you're right on that. There's not.
So it's really, if you want to be considered championship caliber team, you can't be a play-in team.
Mm-hmm.
And teams like the Sixers and the Nets that really struggled at the beginning of the year are starting to move away from that play-in spot, and you're really seeing the teams that are looking more like play-in teams. You mentioned the Bulls. I think the Bulls just have too many injuries to be consistent enough to make the playoffs. Maybe they'll make the play-ins as a 10th seed, but I just think that they're going to really struggle to even do that. I think the Knicks will probably be the 10th seed, honestly.
Yeah, I could definitely.
The Hawks and Heat will probably move up. The Raptors are sort of like around the 7th, 8th spot. So I could see the Heat being the 6th seed. The Hawks finishing 7th, just the way they're playing right now, but maybe they'll even pass that. Although the teams in front of them, I think they're just too good compared to the Hawks. So I think Hawks 7th probably, Heat 8th, maybe 7th. And then you've got the Raptors, Knicks, and Pacers fighting out for the 9th and 10th spot.
And quickly, before we wrap up here, we'll just talk about the quarterfinal games that took place in the World Cup. So first, we could start with the Netherlands and Argentina. The final score was a 2-2. And they went down the penalty kicks, and Argentina beat them by 1 penalty. So they advanced into the semifinals. And Croatia also went to the penalty kicks against Brazil. And Brazil lost by 2 kicks, but they had the chance to limit the deficit to 1 by a freak penalty mistake. I forget the player's name on Brazil, but the keeper for Croatia jumped so early on the opposite side, and he struck on the bottom left corner, and it hit the crossbar and went the other way out. And it was just the worst way to get your team out of the game, in my opinion. Did you see that live, Aiden?
I did. This was on Friday, so I believe I had class, unfortunately. But I did see that Brazil had a lot of chances, and they didn't convert, which is unfortunate for a team like Brazil that had such high expectations. And the other thing is, I understand that Croatia lost to Argentina 3-0 today in the semifinals, but I don't understand this feeling of, Croatia's the surprising team again. They literally made it to the finals in 2018. This is clearly a very solid team that countries need to start taking seriously.
Oh, yeah, they're a very, very good team.
This World Cup, that I feel like it's just sort of this media perception is, they're not that well known as a soccer country, so it's very surprising. Where meanwhile, they've been building up these teams for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason why they made it this far. It's not just solely based on luck or the fact they were in weak pools. It's because they're actual solid teams that need to be taken seriously by the rest of the international soccer community.
Yeah. And then we got England and France. This was probably one of the best matchups. It's just France has that edge. They have the better talent as a group, and they were just able to rally through against England to move on to the semifinals. And let's talk about the surprise team of the entire tournament. No matter even if they lose in the semifinals, it's got to be Morocco.
Yeah.
They've faced some of the best competition up to this point and beat both of them. They ended Ronaldo's World Cup career. They beat Spain, and these are the 2 countries that Morocco actually is beefing in real life. Morocco, for you who don't know, it's 15 kilometers from Spain, and they have constant issues with their borders and stuff. So for Morocco to just decimate both of those teams in just a really surprising fashion is just really weird to see, because both of those teams, especially Spain, powerhouses.
Yeah, it's cool to see a country like Morocco beat on 2 countries, like Portugal and Spain in soccer. I think that's what the World Cup is for.
Mm-hmm.
And they beat Belgium in the group games, which Belgium was considered a favorite for this World Cup too. So that's 3 very, very good teams that they've beaten. Belgium they handled easily. The Spain and Portugal games were obviously going to be tough. And now playing France, it's going to be interesting if they can keep this up. Touching on the England game, Harry Kane's missed penalty kick will forever live in the back of my mind. I understand what he was trying to do because he tried to kick it the same way the goalkeeper went and wanted to put a little bit more air on it. He just flat out missed what would have been one of the biggest goals in England World Cup history had he made it. So I have a feeling that would have given them enough momentum to win the game after that. So to miss that shot is just crushing. The other part that sucks for England is the fact that they controlled the second half outside for about 5 minutes. Within those 5 minutes is when France scored their second goal. So they just had control in the second half. They had multiple chances, and the fact they didn't win is very, very disappointing.
And the ball, I want to talk about the Argentina-Croatia game because I don't want to wait another week. I saw it today. This episode's recorded on December 13th, so the game happened a couple hours ago, and the ball movement from Argentina was insane. Messi is just phenomenal. Amazing give-and-go opportunity to give the assist. I'm blanking on his name right now. Messi did that ball fake, moved past the defender, crossed down the side, and he gave up a beautiful pass to Julian Alvarez for his second goal in the game. Messi had a penalty kick, and he was just phenomenal the whole game through, and he's going back to his second World Cup final, and let's see if he could take it home in his last ever World Cup game.
Yeah, ever since that loss to Saudi Arabia, Argentina's just been on throughout the entire tournament.
Yeah.
Netherlands game, which also won the penalty shootout, that was always going to be a tough game as well. Netherlands has played pretty well. They're not going to be favored in most tournaments, but even this year they were very highly ranked, so that was always going to be a tough game. And Croatia is just a tough team overall. There was a reason why they made it to the finals in 2018. There's a reason why they made it to the semifinals now. And Argentina just made them look like they shouldn't even be on the same level. If this comes down to Argentina-France, which I think a lot of people are expecting, obviously Morocco could pull it off because they played so well throughout the tournament. But if it is Argentina-France, that will make for some really great headlines. It will probably one of the best World Cup finals of recent history that I can think of. Obviously, Spain and Netherlands had some interesting headlines just because of the fact that both of those countries were not really well known in the international soccer community until that game. And it really springboarded Spain's ability to be one of the top teams in the world. Just the fact that Argentina has had multiple opportunities with Messi, and now this is their last shot, and it could be against France, who won in 2018. That would make for an amazing game.
Yeah, and France, in my mind, is the best team left. But I think Morocco is going to be a really tough challenge for them because, like I said, Morocco is just easily has the most momentum left in this tournament, and they've played probably the best set of teams to get to this point. So I would expect a really close game against France, but I do still expect France to come through and play Argentina for the cup.
I agree. And again, if Morocco can pull it out, it would be absolutely amazing. After the way Argentina played today, I don't know if Morocco could stop them. Maybe France could, just because France has done a really good job at shutting down star players and forcing other people to try to make shots, and it hasn't worked well for other teams. But it's going to be really hard for a team to beat Argentina right now.
Yeah, I think they pull through with the cup. I really want to see it because I wanted to see Ronaldo win over Messi, but obviously that can't happen, and Portugal's not built the same way Argentina is. So I really want to see Messi do it for the culture.
I do want to say, even if it's a third-place game between Morocco and Croatia, that would be fun to watch too. So there's two countries that haven't been well known for soccer, especially at the World Cup. They're not playing each other in semifinal. I think both of those teams have a lot of pride to play for still, even if it's not for the World Cup. So that third-place game will be just as much fun to watch, if not more fun in certain ways than the actual World Cup if it comes down to France winning tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the last couple games. I think it's going to be just quality soccer, and we've seen a lot of it this tournament, despite the shitty venue that it's been at this year. It definitely made up for it.
It has. I do, not to get too into the political stuff happening in Qatar, but I've seen a lot of posts. I believe that they're propaganda posts, but I'm not 100% sure, of people saying they're having a great time in Qatar, which is great that they're enjoying it. This is what sports washing, for those of you who don't know, sports washing is a term that means that you use sports to cover up the political actions that you do that negatively affect people, the citizens of your country. So basically what Qatar has done is use the FIFA World Cup to cover up all of the human rights abuses that they've had for building the stadiums for all the citizens living in Qatar. So fans will not see any of that because they'll just be focused on what the government wants them to see, which is the venues, the hotels, all the money they put in.
That won't get used after this.
What's that?
That won't get used after this tournament.
Exactly. None of it will. Most of the infrastructure that they used for this tournament, even outside the stadiums, when you look at the hotels and all that, that won't get used because the country is so small that they have no use for any of this other stuff. It's literally just for this tournament, which is similar to what happened in Brazil when they were forced to build a bunch of infrastructure that isn't being used, which is why they went into an amazing amount of debt after the 2014 World Cup. And it's why Russia was able to get in a much better political standing internationally than it was before 2018, and sort of why they were able to do what they did with Ukraine, because they used soccer to highlight the great parts of their country and sort of make people forget that it's run by a complete fascist dictator. So the FIFA still needs to reckon with the fact that as great as the soccer was on the pitches in Qatar, it doesn't excuse for what happened leading up to this tournament or anything that happens afterwards.
Well, do you guys got anything else before we wrap up?
I do not. I think my rant there at the end will suffice for me.
Well,
Gotcha.
A quick nugget here at the end, though. The Mets are in on Carlos Correa, according to reports.
Ooh, interesting.
Makes the division really tough.
Yep.
Well,
especially when Dora at second, Correa at short, that's a tough infield.
And I just want to say that this is our 20th episode, and we did it in 20 weeks. We didn't take a break.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
That's crazy.
I didn't think we'd be doing this like 20. I'd still think we'd be doing this, but I didn't expect we wouldn't take a break.
Yeah. Right.
But
20 straight.
Yeah. Let's get 20 more. I want to go a whole year, no breaks. So
yeah, that'd be high.
Yeah, I see it because I really didn't even have any struggle like during the height of school year either.
Yeah.
I'm just happy to be done. But Aiden, you're going to be in person for a couple weeks now, right?
I will be. I have a nice break coming up, which is badly needed, but I'm going to be happy to be back in person with you guys.
Yeah, and everyone in the audio room will thank you too. All right, so that'll do it for this week. We upload episodes every Saturday at 2 p.m., so we'll catch you next week.